My name is Paul Shelley, and welcome to the AstroHistorian. This is a channel dedicated to exploring and explaining the lore of sci-fi and space universes and discussing their impact. Today, we'll be doing the floor of the alien manufacturers here on IAE 2955. Welcome, everybody. My name is Paul Berserker01, Batman Shelley, your humble host and space bartender at the Astropub, your moderator on the Captain's Table podcast, and your professor here on the AstroHistorian. Welcome. Close some stuff out. So this is where we basically go into the floor of IAE. We just do this in Invictus, and we talk about the manufacturers on the floor plus the actual ships themselves. So we'll be going over pretty extensive stuff because there's 3 different manufacturers we have to talk to you about this one. So there's going to be some discussion here. So I may have to refer back to my notes a lot because I know some of the stuff off the top of my head, but not fully. So, and I definitely need to update my notes is what I'm discovering. Go. Do this. Perfect. All right. Let's get in, and so we'll see who we got on the floor here. We got a couple people from my organization, the League of Relic Enthusiasts, which is what we've been doing for a while. I'll unmute myself.
What did you do to this game?
All right. Welcome, everybody. Hopefully I have everything. Oop, that is not what I was looking at. Game, why you do this? There we go.
Queen General.
Welcome, everybody. So we're going to be doing the lore tour for the alien manufacturers. We're going to start walking over that direction. So we're going to go over the manufacturers first, and then we're going to start talking about in the individual ships. There's not a lot of lore for the ships on the floor this year, but there'll be enough to understand like the design language and where things come from. So let's walk with me.
I thought they said walking.
Running. We don't have time. We don't have time.
Gotta go fast.
No time to explain. Gotta go find out about lore.
So, the first thing we'll stop off is Asperia, right here. And then we'll kind of go a little bit into the lore of Asperia and a little bit into the lore of the Talon and stuff like that. But the first thing we have to understand is Asperia itself. Now, Asperia is a very old brand. Founded in, well, not very old. It's fairly recent, but it's old in comparison to a lot of manufacturers. It was founded in 2873 by the Ingstrom brothers, Jovi and Theo Ingstrom. They both grew up in Kazi, which is where the Kazi Grazer comes from, on Terra. And they were fascinated by ancient ruins that are famously found in Terra by the original inhabitants of Terra, whom the Terrans joke, and they call the Atlanteans. The only thing that we have definitive is a large stone city that remains that is in Kazi, near their hometown. So they used to visit it all the time. But combined with that, they were fascinated with ship designs, like old designs for ships, and they're sort of, let me turn this down a little bit. The background noise is obnoxious. They were fascinated with old ship designs, and those old ship designs were often ones that never actually saw production, but weren't necessarily bad. So if you think about modern day aviation, there's plenty of cases of planes that were concepted that maybe made it into a prototype stage, or maybe even never made it into the prototype stage, that had interesting ideas that were never brought forward. And as a result, some of those ideas died with those designs. It's very similar to what the Ingstrom brothers were doing when they created Asperia. It was originally just a repository of plans that they preserved from the old manufacturers. So they would scour old manufacturers' archives and other places to get a hold of these original blueprints and plans, and then they would bring them back to their archives, and then they would sell a subscription fee for historians and sociologists and engineers and architects who wanted to get access to these ideas because they might use them for the basis for some of their own ideas. So they would sell a small subscription fee for that. Now, all of that changed towards the end of the 29th, early 30th century when one Hurston showed up. Let me see if I can find the name of him. Here we go. Victor Hurston. Victor Hurston showed up in 2870s, somewhere in the 2870s, shortly after they were founded, with a glaive, a Vanduul glaive, and he brought them because he's like, hey, you're good at old and like unusual ships. Can you fix this up? No one knows where Victor got a basically intact glaive, because no one asks the Hurstons those kinds of questions, because you just don't. They didn't know Vanduul. They didn't have any language. They had no concept of it. They said, yeah, we'll give it a shot. And so they managed to do so by 2877. Victor, at IAE 2877, showed off the fully functioning glaive, got in, took off, and it caused a huge wave because he thanked the Engstrom brothers with Asperia, who helped create this thing. And so they went from being archivists to being ship manufacturers, specializing in old ships as well as exotic alien ships. And that's where they've been today, because a lot of their business comes from the UAE military, who wants them to build replicas of captured Vanduul designs so that they could have Op4 training, or Red Team training, I guess is what they're called, where they train a bunch of pilots to fly like Vanduul, and they give them replica Vanduul ships, and then they train their squadrons against those replicas so that they can learn Vanduul tactics and get used to how the Vanduul ships fly. And as a result, they have a huge repository of ships, and they constantly update these Vanduul ships for the UE military. The stuff we see here, like for instance, this the Stinger over here to the right. The Stinger itself is actually probably an older version of the Stinger that was no longer up to date based off of the updates the Vanduuls have done to that ship itself. So they began to sell it to the open market. That's typically what they do, especially with the Vanduul ships, is they will build the replicas, and then once they say, hey, the UE says, hey, they've updated the Vanduul ship, the Vanduul, this is what they do now. They will study the updates. If they can find a captured version, they'll use the captured version, but then they'll update their designs, and then the other ones will go to what's called the Asperia Boneyard. And it's this huge collection of Vanduul and other ships which have just been abandoned by the UAE. And after the passage of the Militia Mobilization Act, they began to sell them to the public because they're like, hey, people need defense, and we got these ships at work, so let's sell them. So that is the Vanduul side. But the Tevarin side is interesting because both the Prowler, and the Prowler utility, as well as both of the versions of the Talons, come from a discovery called Cabal. So the UAE discovered the Cabal system fairly recently, last 50 years or so. And what they realized when they first began to explore it is that the Cabal system had an abandoned Tevarin colony on it, which surprised everyone because the Tevarin were not known to have had a colony outside of their home system. And by examining the records and finding what was left behind, they discovered that this was a system that was discovered before the start of the First Tevarin War, but was abandoned shortly around the end of the First Tevarin War when the Tevarins failed, or towards the end of it, because it wasn't supported. But effectively, in these overgrown Tevarin cities, colonies, they had remnants of the defense forces that were left intact. So they had fully intact Talons and Prowlers from that time period. As a result, they were able to take these versions and redesign them and reverse engineer them. So Asperia, doing the moral and ethical thing, actually brought in a bunch of Tavaran engineers who were experts at aerospace to study the technology and to really reverse engineer a lot of it for them. But they made these available to the market because they're sort of museum replicas, but they're interesting ideas. Especially with the revival of Tavaran culture as of recently, in the last, again, 50 years or so. These were seen as, like, a lot of Tavaran purchased these for their own purposes because they want to kind of go back to the tradition, So the Talon itself here is a very old ship. It was around during the First Tavaran War in the 2540s. And it was absolutely the terror of the war. The Gladius itself is based off of this design. Basically, they took a look at captured Tavaran Talons. They looked at its stats, how it worked, the shield technology that it had that humanity didn't have, and this became the benchmark to beat. And the Gladius was built to beat the Talon. And it did really well. In fact, we know that it did so well that it actually beat the snot out of the Talon when it came back, when the Second Tavaran War happened, to the point where they had to create the Talon Shrike, which was sort of a modified version of the Talon that utilized overwhelming missile barrages over traditional dogfighting or strafing to overwhelm the shield technology of humanity, which was still well under the abilities of the Tavaran, who were masters of this sort of thing. So there is a version called the Talon Strike, which is available for purchase on the store, and you can actually get it in game as well. But this is by far and large probably the most interesting one. Let's talk about the Prowler. This is probably Prowler utility, isn't it? Yeah, Prowler utility. So, First Tavaran War, the Prowler. Prowler was designed with specific use with an elite military force called the Naule. The Naule were Tavaran warriors who were experts at stealth infiltration. They used traditional Tavaran weapons, which were this... we've got a modified version of them in lore today, which is sort of a halberd, but hand carryable, like a single-handed halberd. It's got a crow's beak, it's got an axe head, and it's got a spear. And it's collapsible, and you can do it. Tavaran pirates use them quite frequently these days, but they were originally the Naule weapons. So they would get on board, and they would use them. They would sneak on board to human ships, board them, and kill everyone before they rose the alarm. So these ships were undetectable by human technology at the time, and even today, the recreations are extremely hard to find on radar. They're great stealth ships, and the Prowler utility is from the Second Tavaran War. This is a sort of, again, the ships they captured or the ships they discovered in Cabal were First Tavaran War / pre-First Tavaran War relics. The Prowler utility that actually existed in lore and the Talon Shrike were Second Tavaran War innovations. So these are sort of recreations, the best ability of what the original ones would look like, but not exactly the same. So the utility is based off of a vehicle transport version of the Prowler, which was seen during the Second Tavaran War to be able to distribute the famed Tavaran hover tanks that would be distributed on battlefields. So they must have been pretty small if they could be carried into this, but you get the idea. They were very effective. It's still stealth ships. Tavaran always used stealth to their advantage. They were much prefer ambushes, and when they're forced to get into a fight, they would try to choose that fight themselves and use misdirection as much as possible to try to split off their enemies. They're very good at that. All right, that's Asperia. Let's talk about G'tak, because I don't think we have much of an Aopoa. I think there's probably the Nox back there. G'tak is important to understand. I'm almost certainly mispronouncing it, so I apologize for those Xi'an linguists out there. But G'tak is almost certainly the oldest, well, possibly, The Banu Suli might be older. Banu might be older. But in terms of an actual corporation and like group, the Ghatak brand is the oldest the oldest ship company in the universe. They date back to the original founding of the Xi'an Empire, when the Xi'an accidentally, intentionally de-terraformed their planet. It's a long story, but effectively the Xi'an had a very warlike time period where, during their early rise, where they were constantly fighting each other in different clans. And two clans decided that they were going to use terraforming technology, which was developed in a rare chance of like both of their all the clans getting together because they had something similar to like a climate crisis, and they needed to figure out a technology to save themselves. So they built these terraforming technologies that would save their planet. But as a result, some clans got together and said, we could use this to attack our enemies. And so they tried to use terraforming technology on their enemies, which caused the entire planet to become de-terraformed and a mass genocide of their people. The only people who survived were the people who were able to either escape on ships or were already in space. And we're talking very primitive spacecraft compared to what they have now. I think they may not even had jump point technology at that point. They did have quantum technology. So they were sort of a species without a planet, and so they rallied around a single family, which became the first imperial family. But House Ghatak, the clan Ghatak, that group supported and were always the steadfast supporter of the first imperial family. So as part of their gratitude, they were given the right to only ever produce, or to produce any industrial ship forever. So most houses have to fight for the right to become the manufacturer of specific groups. Like Aopoa, it produces all light and military fighters. But they only got that role recently. Well, within reason, like before contact with humanity, but not much before, like 1,000 years or so. And this ship, the Ghatak, is always been that way. So they are the oldest, most powerful family in the Xi'an Empire, next to the emperor themselves. But as a result, they are also very careful. They're very conservative with what they do. And so famously, there was a deal made between Misk and a company we'll talk about here in a moment called Aopoa. That deal was made actually at the behest of Ghatak. Ghatak went to Aopoa, told them to talk with Misk because Misk was interested in Aopoa's thruster technology. And Ghatak said, you do this for us, we'll give you some good boy points or some kudo points, maybe best for the empire kind of thing. And which you give them their thruster tech, and we get the rights to build and manufacture and distribute whole series ships. Because they were fascinated by the whole series and how it worked. And as a result, the whole series destruction, almost certainly, we don't know how this for sure, but almost certainly the building and the maintenance and the study of how the whole series worked led to their creation of the Reily, which will, I think there's a holograph around here, but we'll get to that here in a moment. So this is a unique ship, the Sulian, because this is a human ship. This is designed for the human market. We don't believe that it's actually part of the Xi'an market, because the Xi'an don't really have that kind of idea. So this is a ship that's made from Xi'an technology, designed for the human market, because there's a lot, since the end of the Cold War, there's been a lot of Xi'an influence in the markets. And so it's a distinctly alien appearance, but its main focus is, of course, to satisfy human starter markets, first-time buyers or people who are on the edge of the frontier who need something cheap. So this is a vertical takeoff and landing ship, but it is very much designed as a kind of everyman ship. I believe these are the actual cargo pod areas, and then when it's in flight, these things like retract up a little bit. And then the entrance is interesting. Where is the entrance? Here. Notice this. This is another thing of the Xi'an design, is master of anti-gravity. So these stairs are completely anti-grav. You get in, and then everything is like they've got a it's got a vertical elevator all the way to the pilot seat, and you'll see what happens when I get in the pilot seat. But now it's it's like this. The second you get in, it'll flip you upside down, or flip you up face up, and now you take off and land vertically. This is another thing that's very common is the control balls. These sort of like balls you control with your hands rather than joysticks. That's pretty unique, and it's pretty standard across most of the Xi'an standards. And someone just threw something at the cockpit. Good shot. But it also has its own like living quarters and stuff like that. All right. Let's see what they have in the back. I don't think they have AOPOA. They might have AOPOA. They have AOPOA here. Okay, good. So this is the Gatak Reily. You can see sort of the design has changed up a little bit from the original concept, but this is a large cargo vessel, very similar to the whole series. It will actually have its cargo on the exterior, sort of in the back area over here, to carry cargo to and fro for cargo, long haul cargo stuff. Keep moving. Let's keep moving. When we're walking, we're running, and we're running. I think in the back here is where we get the other ones. Yes. So, we're going to talk a little bit about AOPOA. Now, AOPOA, specifically, and pull up quick. Is founded by the House Poa, and we don't know exactly when they existed, when they were first founded. At least I don't really have them for their time period. But we do know that they're fairly recent because their design style was kind of a revolution. Now, back when the Emperor Krei first took over, the first Emperor Krei, who is not the current one who is in power, but the one before him, his mother, I believe, they were looking for a new family to take over the light fighter, and it specifically says advanced spacecraft and the will and the grace of the Emperor Krei. So we actually do know it was over a millennium ago. So over 1,000 years ago, the light fighter manufacturers fell out of favor. The family who built it. So a bunch of different families built their own ships to compete in a battle royale sort of event where whichever ship won would get the contract. AOPOA did not have a chance. They were a small house. They didn't have much of abilities for these, but they ended up being able to do pretty well only because they painted the Imperial seal onto their ship. And of course, this is all being observed by the Emperor. So nobody wanted to fire at the AOPOA ship because if they fired at the AOPOA ship, they might damage the seal, which might upset the Emperor. And using this sneaky tactic, they won. And while they weren't the best manufacturer, they were really clever. And so part of that cleverness was they discovered and designed a new propulsion method that was very unique to AOPOA, which is this right here. These are the omnidirectional thrusters. They work as both mainline thrusters and maneuvering thrusters. They've become the standard thruster that's on all Xi'an designs. And what makes it so that they don't have to have a bunch of different maneuvering thrusters all over their ship. They can just use their main thrusters as maneuvering thrusters, which means they get the same speed, the same propulsion in and out of the like at any direction. So this allows them to be very maneuverable in dogfights, and they become like, for instance, the Aopoa Cartual, which the original version was known by the humanity as the Quark. That's sort of like NATO classification. In the Star Citizen universe, the UE classification called it the Quark. Was known to do insane maneuvers around human pilots when human pilots tried to dogfight them or tried to like intimidate them. The things that the human pilots couldn't pull in their own ships. So this is the Santok Yai. The story of the Santok Yai is very brief, but the Santok Yai is actually the Hornet Killer. This was designed during the latter half of the, actually after the Cold War had ended. The Xi'an saw humanity coming out of the Cold War with a rapid boost of technological innovation. And when they saw the Hornet being designed, they realized the Hornet would be devastating to their fleet, which was mostly based off of what we know today as the Cartual. And they needed something to compete with the Hornet. So they designed what we know today as the Santok Yai. It was called something else, but it's basically like the name basically means something like falcon or eagle. It's sort of just the bird that inspires terror is the name of it, is the direct translation. And its stats were through the roof. It was insane. And we only ever saw them in passing along patrols until one day there was a detection of one of these flights of these ships escorting a cargo vessel where there was an explosion on the cargo vessel. And this caused a sort of chain reaction that destroyed a bunch of these ships. But some of them were able to survive and then crash land on a nearby planet, which was very harsh in terms of the environment, very cold. And some human intelligence who weren't supposed to be there in a sort of a secret base that were gathering intelligence discovered this, realized that A, there was a chance to study some of this technology, and B, they had to do something because they were in trouble. Managed to sneak off to get help from a Javelin destroyer squadron who was in the area, who arrived to try to render aid to these ships. So they came down and began to explore the area in MPUVs and discovered several of these crashes. In fact, they found 2 crashes that seemed to be viable. One that seemed like there was a pilot who's still alive, but he was crushed under the weight of the ship. So the Starmen came down and began to try to use basically laser cutters to try to extract the pilot out of the wreckage. But because they didn't know what they were doing, because they had never seen the ship before, they accidentally lasered into a fuel tank that had been ruptured and blew the whole thing up, killing the pilot, but also killing all the rescuers. But the other one they found was a crash ship with tracks leading away, and were able to find the tracks of the pilot who had escaped, pick them up, bring them back to the Javelin, warm them up, save their life, and then return them back to the Xi'an. And this was a huge moment because this is like the first time humanity and Xi'an had a just sort of direct interaction where humanity was actively trying to help the Xi'an rather than to antagonize them. And so this was a big like political win for both sides. And the next year, the Xi'an released the Santok Yai to the human market. They unveiled it at IAE. And this scared the hell out of intelligence personnel because what that meant, because the ones they showed off was exactly the same ones. Because, you know, of course, after we gave back the Xi'an pilot, we took all of the wreckage that had crashed and we're like, okay, now we're going to study this. What the hell is this thing? And basically, the Santok Yai is the exact same version that we saw that was the military versions they were using. And the Xi'an do not let us see their military versions. So as a result, we know, based off of this, that if they're releasing the Santok Yai to us, they have another more advanced version of this, because it's still around. We still see things that look like this. There's a more advanced military version that already exists that is in production that's better than this. Likely, and again, in a response to the F8, which was being built at around the same time. So, that's this. It's available in the market. The Nox has got an interesting story as well. The Nox was built in response to the Drake Dragonfly. So I told the story with Drake with the dragonfly, but basically there's a colony between the humans and Tavaran, Xi'an. There's like a world that has a bunch of Xi'an colonies and human colonies together. They work together. It's sort of like an experiment in cooperation. And on one of these colonies, one of the human colonists got a dragonfly, showed up to the Xi'an colony with the dragonfly, and there they showed off. They say, "Hey, look, we got hover technology too." And the colonists loved it. They flew. They drove around the dragonfly, like enjoying it, and everyone's like, "Wow, this is great." And then they realized, we don't have anything like this. Why don't we have anything like this? We're masters of anti-grav and we don't have a anti-grav bike. So the reports of this came back to Aopoa, who then said, okay, we'll build our own. And so they took what the experiences of these people was, and, you know, obviously probably bought a couple of dragonflies because it's Drake, you know, why not? And then reverse engineered it. So they created their own hover bike. This is sort of a street racer version. So it's much faster and a little bit more nimble than the Dragonfly, but it's not nearly as maneuverable as something like the X1 or the Pulse. So, yeah, that's it. Let's talk about the Banu. Let's talk about the Banu Defender. This ship is so old, we have no idea when it was originally built. Because the first contact with humanity with the Banu named Jerry actually was in a Defender. And as far as we know, it's the same design. It's kept the same design for hundreds of years. The interior has changed a little bit here and there. But the thing about the Banu is that they run off these things called Suli, which are the basic unit of organization in the Banu society. As long as two Banu get together, they can form a Suli. Sulis are as small as two Banu, up to millions of Banu can be part of a Suli. And these Suli are sort of part trade guild, part company, part family. So they're a little bit of everything. Once you're part of a Suli, you effectively get ride or die status with them because you become basically family. Because everyone wants to work together efficiently to be able to complete the task they're set out for. The Banu are a very fractious society. There's not really one or even multiple unifying governments. They have one unifying coalition called the Protectorate. It just translates as the Protectorate, which is just sort of a council that they get together to decide how they deal with outsiders, with non-Banu and non-Suli. So all the Sulis get together and make regulations on how they deal with the outside world. The Sulis themselves always do different things. So like the Banu Suli you'll see here, which is the manufacturer of this, is actually a sort of a holding company where if you want to make a Banu Defender or Merchantman for the market of humanity, you have to go through the holding company first, who will say, these are the regulations, these are things you have to do, these are standards you have to manufacture it at to meet human standards. Then they will sell it to that holding company, who then sell it to humanity. So all Banu Defenders in human space are standardized because of that. And to be fair, the Banu probably don't know either. That's almost 100% true because they don't keep records. But this ship itself is unique because its design is specifically in its name, Defender. Its job is to not overwhelm an enemy with force, not to outrun an enemy, but to lure enemies away from convoys. So a Defender comes out to face an enemy, and its sole job is to basically capture the enemy in a sort of to make them focus on them while the convoys are getting away, while the trade ships are getting away. So their job is to stay in the fight long enough and keep the attention of the enemies long enough that they will be able to win by attrition, effectively. Open this up a little bit. Grab open. So inside here, we've got these like kind of ribs in here. You can see this is sort of like natural. It's almost like it's grown. It might be grown. But this is very similar to like a lot of Banu technology. Banu is very organic, flowing, because they are very artisanal. The Banu really, really focus on artistry rather than like utility. They want utility in artistry together, but the whole idea is to why create a functional ship when you can create a functional ship that is also beautiful and unique. They're very let's make the best ship ever kind of mentality. So the defenders you'd see in Banu space may have the same frame, but they're going to be wildly different in terms of their purposes. They might have, and the Banu routinely use whatever's the best available, not just Banu technology. The Defender is a great example of that because it has these singes, which are probably the only Banu weapons that exist that we know of, but it also has Tavaran shield technology. It has Xi'an thruster technology. And I think it has human quantum travel technology, or not quantum travel, jump point technology. So it's a combo of many different species together into a Banu package. That's sort of all Banu designs. All right. Let's move over to the center over here, and let's take question and answers. It's a light fighter, but the size of a heavy fighter. Please find any sense. Its main job in fiction is to survive. So it should be maneuverable, but also tough. There's a balance issue there, though, because you can't make a maneuverable, tough ship and then also, be balanced. Did they always have those front legs? I thought they had spindly back legs. They always had those front legs. If you have any questions about lore, let me know, because, this is mostly about lore. We're not going to talk about the meta too much because it's kind of pointless right now.
I don't know why they haven't put the weapon.
Ah, the weapon. Yes, because you have to still unlock it. I'd love to be able to see the weapon. Those who don't know, he's referring to the ICTI, which is a weaponized version of the ATLS, the cargo transport. It's very cool. It's very fun. And it is very much in line of the Banu style, which is we can't afford to develop a brand new exosuit, so let's just use what we can get and then try to make it the best version we can. Are Tavaran ships still manufactured? Asperia still builds Tavaran ships, but there's so much lost Tavaran technology that it's hard to really get that. We don't know if we'll ever see a Tavaran capital ship. I would hope we see the Tavaran Jackal, which is sort of the defensive version. It's the good version of the Hurricane. It's a two-person ship where the secondary pilot is an engineer whose main job was to rotate and point shields so that the pilot can focus on flying and fighting to make it damn near indestructible. Oh, beer. Thank you. Are there any known Xi'an, Banu, or Tavaran capital ships in there? We don't know the names for them, but the Banu capital ship is the merchantman. That works as their capital ship. They don't really have a fleet. They have militias, but not defense fleets. And we do know that the Xi'an and the Tavaran had capital ships. We just don't know what they are. Industrial espionage must be lacking in the verse because some of the tech, like anti-grav, is objectively better than others. I don't know why it hasn't been widely implemented. Probably power requirements. The thing you got to understand about the Xi'an tech is that the Xi'an are very protective of their technology. So even if you buy a bunch of Xi'an technology, they're not going to give you anything you don't already know. So this, I'll go back here real quickly to show you. This technology here is neat, but it's more flair than it is functional. And is it worth the power requirements to build something like this out for a typical human ship? Probably not. But we kind of see that with the hover skids of the Nomad. So sort of that sort of a kind of approach. Trip drops should be working. When in doubt, when it comes to why hasn't this been adapted, is it comes down to practicality. Does it work practically in the universe? Then probably not. The thing that has been implemented is the Xi'an thruster technology. That's what Mirai is all about. Mirai is all about utilizing Xi'an thruster technology, and of course that is bespoke to MISC. And one thing you got to understand about the Star Citizen universe is that the companies really run everything. So it would be very difficult to steal MISC's technology, which they got from the Xi'an, and then implement it on yourself without getting sued into oblivion. RE's Xi'an tech being implemented. How would you trust a Drake ship with Xi'an hover tech? I mean, I believe that that's kind of what the Dragonfly was sort of their attempt at using Xi'an tech. Question, current shields block energy weapons. Lore says Tavaran shields block ballistics. Also, they had personal shields tech. Is there any indication that this is coming to shops near us? Not yet, but a lot of that may also come down to rampant xenophobia. So we don't know when they developed personal shields, but we do know that the majority of the shield tech that is the best of the Tavaran shield tech, like the Phalanx technology, was developed in the Second Tavaran War, and a lot of it was destroyed because the Tavaran destroyed themselves during the Purge. So we do have some Phalanx shields around, but they're sort of copies of it, so they may not be the same. Kind of like, think of it kind of like Greek fire. We kind of know how it works, but we also know how to counter it pretty easily because we've had 400 years around it. So, Sukarin, yeah. Now, as in terms of personal shield technology, I don't remember if they did. They may have. But again, that technology may have also been lost because it's just been destroyed. So 900 years, it's not communism or democracy, it's capitalism that leads us to the stars. Sort of. It's dictatorship and capitalism. Oligarchy, best way of putting it. Oligarchy that leads us to the stars. Can you explain the Purge? Sure. After the Second Tavaran War, the Tavaran went mad. The Second Tavaran War was seen as a holy war. Their leader, Horathal, the leader of the Tavaran during the Second Tavaran War, was seen as a holy leader. Was like a priest as a general. And so basically the war was about them retaking their homeworld in the name of their religion. And when they failed, basically the Tavaran, many of the Tavarans who survived, especially the most devout, lost their minds because they felt like they failed their religion. And if they failed their religion, then none of the things that their religion brought them deserved to be understood or left. So they burned their temples, they burned their technology, they burned their holy books, they destroyed everything in response to the failure of the Second Tavaran War. And there are some temples that are still around, but like on the Tavaran homeworld, for instance, that's only because human militia actively tried to fight back like Tavaran mobs from destroying the temple because they're like, this is too important of a site to lose. Question, could we maybe get a Banu history and understanding of their background as well as technology approach from the Xi'an who are chronicling Banu history? To a degree, we do have some of that, but the Xi'an are very secretive. They don't like telling us things that we don't already know or they don't think we should know. Like, we do know their first contact with the Xi'an was in 1923. And the Banu at that point were already spacefaring and had quantum travel. There's also a really rough speculative question for Misk and Xi'an. Misk is a buyout of a manufacturing concern called Acorn pre-Mezer, and there have to be a few explanations for how hard that how that happened. Acorn still exists. Acorn is still in game right now. Acorn does make like I think thrusters. You can buy some Acorn stuff in game, but it was a division of Acorn called like the lifestyle division that they bought out. Basically, the Musashi Industrial or Musashi Starflight Concern and Acorn Limited merged. So basically, it was like a spin-off of Acorn that was its own separate company, but still part of Acorn that they were trying to get rid of. So it was its own sort of independent brand that merged with this Musashi brand that was failing to try to create that. And really, it was about the hull. I'm pretty sure, we don't have to get definition on this, but I'm pretty sure that the Acorn lifestyle brand developed the whole series. This is during the great cargo crisis of the early 29th century. They developed the whole series, but they didn't have the manufacturing capacity to build the whole series themselves. And Acorn wasn't a ship manufacturer, they were a parts manufacturer. So they spun off from Acorn and merged with this heavy industries ship manufacturer so that they could build the whole series. Because the whole series was developed, we know in lore, it was developed 2 years before the founding of Misk. So effectively, you can see it as a opportunity in disguise. Now, we don't know if Acorn is probably a subsidiary of Misk. It could be. Or if Misk is a subsidiary of Acorn. I think they're two separate companies now, but you know how sometimes companies can spin off from each other, which were old brands. Oh man, I hope we find some remnants of Tevarin religion sometimes. The Tevarin religion still exists. A lot of, when they discovered Cabal, a lot of the original Rijoran texts, Rijora is their religion, were there. So we actually found the original Rijoran text. It's led to a revival of Tevarin religion and Tevarin culture, which has been taken in two ways. The Tevarin outside of the UEE, places who blame the UEE for all their problems, they tend to take a hardline militaristic approach to Rijora culture, kind of like Orthal did. Whereas the Tevarin inside the UEE are much more trying to adapt the old ways with the new ways. Like that's led by the senator from the Tevarin homeworld called Suj Kosi, who's a Tevarin himself. Military veteran, served in the army, then served in the Navy, flew vanguards for the Navy. Was still in Navy Reserve when he got elected as the senator. His sort of perspective was, we need to make the Tevarin such an important part of the UEE, sort of like the militaristic arm of the UEE, where the UEE could call on the Tevarin as its military subspecies within the Empire. That the Tevarin will be protected from discrimination and other things simply because there's so many of us who serve that all of us get citizenship that will have a much greater impact on voting than the average human. So we're to be such a huge voting bloc that they have to listen to us, and we get much more power in the UEE because they're trying to take advantage of the UEE structure. It's completely legal. They just have to serve, and so that's the whole purpose. So I personally believe that we're heading to what I call the Third Tevarin War, which is where the Tevarin outside of the UEE attempt to invade the UEE and take over the Tevarin homeworld, and the Tevarin inside the UEE form a militia or some sort of private entity to defeat the encroaching Tevarin. So it's more like a Tevarin civil war over the future of the Tevarin people, but we'll see. This is like the thing when indigenous peoples in the U.S. join the U.S. military. Yes, that's they're sort of a stand-in, especially if you're talking about like story-wise. The Tevarin are sort of a stand-in for indigenous peoples being colonized and conquered by a larger imperial force. And like, where do you make your way? You know, do you adapt to the culture that you've been conquered by? Do you resist the culture you conquered by? You find a middle way? That's that sort of thing. Can Gatak Sulin dock with the Gatak Reily cargo ship? We don't know. Possibly. Question: if you look at the Salvation's front structure, the way it deploys, it looks like the tech they're using on the Astra. Any chance they'll have the tech? They all have the tech they need to make it? Probably. These ships are the most beautiful in the game. We need more alien, less human designs, adapted, but not conforming to human standards. Until that gets published, it'll just use this the Sanghili Writ of Union as stand-in for Rejora. We have some elements of the Rejora that we know of. Like, for instance, there is a code that says when you will conquer an enemy, that enemy becomes you. And when you are conquered by an enemy, you must adapt to their culture, which is the whole Rejora argument that Sujkosi is making, which is we were conquered. We were defeated twice. We are a defeated people. We must obey the Rejora and adapt to the people whom we've been conquered by. And as a result, they will help us, as the Rejora has said. He's basically saying that we can use our own religion as a means to ensure our protection through our own practices. So he's encouraging all Tavaran of military age to join the military of their own free will to attempt to get citizenship. Did the Xi'an ever go to war with the Vanduul like humans did? Not war, but they definitely fought. The lore, which is old lore, says they know of each other, and the Xi'an are grudgingly respected by the Vanduul. But and they have some trade relations with the Xi'an and the Vanduul, but the Xi'an hate the Vanduul hate the Xi'an because they see them as sneaky cowards, and the Xi'an hate the Vanduul. Xi'an hate the Vanduul because they see them as barbarians, blunt barbarians, and the Vanduul hate the Xi'an because they see them as sneaky cowards. But I think it's just I can't emphasize this enough. The Xi'an is the bigger empire. They're the biggest empire we know of in the galaxy. They are far larger than humanity. And they have such an amazing amount of technology and force that there's no way humanity could ever beat them in a one-to-one fight. But it's just that humanity is such a pain in the ass that if the Xi'an ever invaded humanity, they'd probably be stalled because of just the sheer amount of ferocity humans would fight them by. So it's sort of the Xi'an don't really want to deal with the humans because it would make them weaker against their ancestral enemy, the Kurthok, which is on the other side of their empire. But at the same time, they need to defend against humanity because they know humanity has this ability to just fucking go crazy and blame aliens for all their problems, which they experienced, since a lot of the Xi'an who've lived for 400 plus years have been around since the first contact and still remember first contact and know how crazy humans can be. So it'd be kind of like if you saw a kid growing up and then watched them throughout their whole lives and saw their mood swings as they grew up, and then saw them have kids and saw them have the mood swings as they grow up, and being like, I have no idea how to trust this family. This family is insane. Xi'an have a Pyrrhic victory, so they don't see the invasion as making sense. And the Xi'an are famous for thinking 4 steps ahead. So, like, the Xi'an have plans within plans within plans within plans. Xi'an are probably already at a stage of, they probably already have a plan for what if humanity and the Kurthok make contact. Because we tried. We actually tried to make contact with the Kurthok to make an alliance because we wanted to check the Tavaran on both their sides. But our attempt to do so was instantly thwarted and exposed and nearly caused a war between the Xi'an and human empire. And the funny part is that was the Division. The Division is the one who did it. The famous shadow secret organization that is controlled by the Senate. It's the CIA, sort of. If the CIA answered only to Congress and not to the president. The Xi'an don't have a plan if humanity allies itself with the Vanduul. we know nothing about with the Krthok, other than the Xian are fucking terrified of them. And if the Xian, this massive, ancient, powerful empire, are terrified of the Krthok, they are probably generations ahead of humanity in terms of technology and ability. It's been floated a couple times that the Xian are... I don't know why it says Delianor died. Oh, we have 30k. I was inactive for too long. No! I didn't move. Let me join on y'all. Oop. Yeah, the conflict that they've had with the Krthok, which is still going on, is called the Spirit Wars. Okay, so how much did the Xian invest in the Cold War? We don't know, but we do know that they actually hosted human rebels, because they have their own clan, their own family that is just authorized pirates. They have a government sanctioned mafia. It sort of works as sort of a deniable asset, but their design is to attack other pirates and other outlaws to keep them in line. But so as a result, the Xian Empire lets this family do a little bit of crime as a treat, as long as they keep the more intense criminals who are outside the structure in line. And that group was in charge of housing and maintaining human rebels during the Mezzer era to help fight the war. Privateers. If the country that hosted the privateers were like, yeah, you can attack a couple of our fleets. Well, we're okay. Just don't go crazy with it. Any other questions? The one thing we know about the Krthok, based off of their own sort of initial plans, was their idea was that they were able to have faster than light communications, which was at the time not going to be a thing that any other race could have. So they were in like instantaneous communication, which if you've gathered anything I've talked about recently, seems like CIG is backtracking on. So I honestly think they're going to be a robotic race. So like some sort of synthetic race that is not aggressive. Because the way that the Xian sort of talk about the story, I'm fairly certain that the Xian were the aggressors. They saw a race, they saw a land they wanted, they took it, they fought the Krthok, and they were not prepared for the punchback that the Krthok gave. And as a result, the Krthok, they're scared of the Krthok because they sort of represent the dark side of their own nature, the Xian. Because they used to be very violent, like very violent with each other. And they've tried to curb that side of their culture. And they do so through like espionage and duplicity inside their own families. But we know that the Krthok effectively murdered the entire royal family in a single moment in time, and to wipe out the bloodline, because they discovered that the Xian required every member of the family to be considered a member of the royal family. You had to have this specific DNA sequence, which was unique to the royal family. It was like a mutation, and they knew if they killed all of them at once, they would not have an empire. And so this created a chaos, which ended up causing the empire to nearly fall. But even though there's this mini civil war that happened in the middle of this war, and these Krthok were terrified, like the Xian were terrified of the Krthok, they never actually seemed to take advantage. Krithok didn't seem to take advantage of this chaos, even though it's clear they could have. So I think that the Krithok are a very insular species. So that's why I think of them as, because the one kind of thing we don't have is robots, and I think anti-robot sort of AI sentiment is very rife throughout Star Citizen in terms of its like themes. So them being a robotic race that is very defensive oriented would kind of make sense. Are there any lore on the Vanduul and Cathok interacting at all? No. Wrong side of the Empire. So the Vanduul sort of touch the Xi'an, but they touch the Xi'an on their western half, and they're mostly around humanity. The Cathok on the eastern side of the Xi'an Empire. And what we know in game of the Xi'an Empire, it is a fraction of the Empire. There's like 10 systems for Xi'an. They have hundreds of systems. So they're a massive system. Are there any known cut sentient species? No, not that we know of. Oh, I was going back. Outside of the Raylan, BMM, Jackal, and Vanduul ships, are there any known niches that alien lore ships exist we haven't seen in game or store? There's been a joke about the Banu Trip Taker, which is sort of like a Banu Explorer. There's obviously capital ships of the Banu or the Xi'an and the Tavaran, but not so much a question. I just hope we get to see the cleaner bot union at Levski. Question: how weird is Wicklow to like his own people? Not too weird. The first Banu to contact humanity, Jerry, was also fascinated by human culture. So it's not unusual for Banu to be fascinated by humanity or other species. And I know a lot of people say, like, oh yeah, well, Wicklow, like, why does Wicklow not have Vasuli? It's because he's retired. He's running the Emporium himself. Apparently, all the Roombas at Levski achieved sentience at the same time and decided to unionize. Where are you getting this lore? Wickow's like 40, 35 to 40. Yeah, it's usually about 35 is their maturity. Big. So he could be younger, only because sometimes you can gain your freedom if you negotiate well after the death of the Exosuli. Is literally the announcement in the Levski hospital? Oh, I haven't been to Levski's hospital, so I have to do that. Did they call them the Cleaner Bot Union or something like that? You said Wicklow doesn't have a Suli? He doesn't have a Suli anymore. He had a Suli. He worked as an engineer Suli, but he retired from it. What's that? A Suli is the basic unit of Banu culture. So basically, a Suli is a family or a trade guild or a company, sort of combination of all those things. Are there any road vehicles, or does alien races adopt the use of road vehicles like Drake Mule? They can adopt the use of that. Are we all going back? Okay, let's go back. I didn't know if we were going back in or not. I'm done here, so. There we go. It's Banu similar to Ferengi. Ferengi live for profit. The Banu don't live for profit. They live for excellence. The ideal Banu society, the ideal in Banu society of perfection, the ideal Banu is someone who is very good at what they do, and they are the only ones who can do what they do, and they make something that is unique. Unique and it can be useful, just unique. Are we aware if alien species have any capital systems? Yes. We don't know what the capital system of the Xi'an are, but we know that their capital system, original home system, is destroyed. But we do believe that Bacchus is the home world of the Tavaran. That's Tavaran. Banu. And the Tavaran's homeworld is in our empire. It's called Elysium. They call it Jalan. But we call it Elysium. Less greedy dwarves. That's a good way of putting it. Question: does Xi'an have any better control of the jump points? Better control of jump points than humans? They're about the same. As far as we know, they're about the same. Question: who's Devin on lore, on SE lore, and why is his name written there? Plus, there's a cute picture on the wall inside Levski Hospital. I have no idea. So, Grathok, human, Tavaran, Vandal, Xi'an. Are there any other known races out there? There's a theory that there's a race that is beyond the Vandal that are pushing the Vandal into human space. We don't know what they are. They could be the Grathok. They could be something else. There's an extinct race called the Hadesians from the Hades system. Yes, we don't know what their actual name was because we never translated their language. But are there any lore political movements around Elysium Tavaran reclamation? Yeah, we talked about that a little bit already. There's sort of two sides of the Tavaran. There's one side which is outside the UEE space, which sees the UEE as evil and wants to sort of defeat the UEE. And there's a group that are inside the UE that kind of want to adapt to the UE. The Oratonians found a way behind Vandu space. Oratonian. Oh, yeah. The Osoians. Yes. There's the Osoians who are a primitive race. Look at the Osoian hides. You know, there's a couple of different primitive races. There's Burgess Ape, I think, which is another one. But they were like, at best, Stone Age. You know, not really like any industrial age or anything. They're still the aggressor. I mean, the Vandals are still the aggressors. They're just being pushed, you know? All right, I'm going to give Tree the leader. Yep. We're not a leader. Yep. Yeah, I managed to get it to work. Statement: your knowledge is too great. We are not worthy. I just have a broken brain where I suck up all this information, and I'm sometimes wrong. I'm not always perfect. There's at least one dude who comments on basically all of my videos with things that I get wrong, and is like, "You did it okay, but you forgot this, and I'm like, "Make your own video, buddy." Like, I'm glad you're trying to help me out, but it comes across as, you know, like, you did okay. I'll allow it. You only made a few mistakes this time. Kind of like, all right, bud. All right.
Well, actually,
Yeah. I'm sure he doesn't mean it that. I'm sure it's just, he's just trying to be helpful, and he just doesn't really understand it. I always assume the best, you know? Because if you assume he's just a jackass, it's like... The teacher doesn't like get grades? No. Because it's like, I'm not talking about something that's like life or death. It's like a few things that are like for instance, you know, well, actually, this isn't a size 10 cannon, it's a size 9 cannon. Like, that doesn't matter. What matters is big cannon. Like,
Gun.
It is gun. This is not a technical manual of something that will change. This is a understanding general of the idea. Is there a lore op today? Yeah, we're going to be doing that here in a moment. Does that surprise you, the Star Citizen community? No, but it's like, you know, I prefer people, if you're going to do something like that, and again, I'm not against this, make your own lore video, you know? Call me out and make a video. It's like, oh yeah, well, Paul said this, but it's wrong. It's actually this. That's great, because I want more people to make lore videos. Don't rely on just me.
Also drive engagement.
Yeah, it drives engagement, that kind of stuff, you know?
Hey Joe, I'm going to toss you party lead. If you can just toss it back to me, that sometimes frees up the invites that are kind of stuck to people.
Yep.
All right, y'all. We're going to be moving over to the Astro Pub on YouTube here in about 15 minutes. If you have any questions, let me know. More questions are always welcome. I just saw multiple people doing that on Morph's new videos, rolling out ISO hard. I mean, like, it's the internet. You kind of expect it.
Point of clarification, since party is kind of working, are we still taking independent ships?
I think so.
We will try to get as many people as we can together, and then anybody who's not in the party can take their own ships, and anybody who's in a party gets a choice.
I'm already heading out because I already spawned something. I'll wait until we get more.
I feel like I missed a invite.
Oh, don't worry, they're coming. So everybody leave the previous party, and I will start sending invites out shortly.
I have one more question. How fantastic is the Clipper? All right, I'm going to mute myself for this one. Everyone loves the Clipper, and I don't hate it. I think it's fine, but I don't get it. Like, for me, it's just like, I get it, but I also don't get it myself. It's fine. it's very Drake, and it calls to the solo nature of people who want to be out in the various and do kind of their own thing. So, but people like it, so it's fine. Nothing wrong with that. Do you want me to leave, disband my party, or?
No, we're good. We're
Okay.
slowly trickling people in.
You know what? I'm going to try from the login menu.
Sounds good.
For those of us not on Orison, are we meeting at Seraphim or should we meet at the jump point?
We'll probably just meet at the jump point.
Yeah, jump point's fine.
Okay. You got it, boss.
Welcome to Horizon, the city in the clouds.
It's not
Welcome
a
to-
real Orison.
Do you have any questions about lore? If not, we'll wrap this up and move on to our gameplay section. So we will be doing gameplay. I hang out with my league of Relic Enthusiasts, which is the organization I help run. These are some of these folks here. On Sundays we do expeditions together. Sometimes we go out and look for relics in sort of like the old metals and other things in the game. And so we just do the events as well. We just kind of hang out. We're a very relaxed group, but we just want you to participate. So if you are interested in joining us, we're always open. We just ask you to be active and try to make when you can. It's not like you have to make it or you're cut off, but like, make once in a while, because we want an active org of people who are engaged in playing. So. Do you see the possibility of using the Clipper chassis to redo the Herald? Maybe. Thanks for any manufacturers lore. So, are Squadron 42 events going to be big events on Star Citizen lore? Yes, probably. Which is one of the reasons why there's a lot of untold stuff, like a lot of stuff that's kind of hanging out there that we don't have information for. I see a lot of people get frustrated with like, well, why don't we have information about this or this? It's like, because it's Squadron story. Almost certainly. But yeah, it takes place in 2945 through at least 2946. Squadron 42 Part 2 and 3 will probably take place over a couple years as well. I would imagine it would go from 2945 all the way up to 2948 or even 2950. So maybe over the course of like 4 or 5 years. Yes, that's right now this is only through the bundle, but like everything, you'll probably be able to get it in game eventually. Does lore take beginner players to tag along and learn while they're useful? If they want to, yeah. They just have to be in Discord is the main thing we asked for when we do open events. If you want to join the event, join the company or join the group, then yeah, it's a little bit easier. All right, y'all. For those on Twitch, we're just going to move over to the other thing. But for those on YouTube, we'll be moving over. It'll move you over to the new live stream. Thank you for watching. We'll be back tomorrow for another lore tour. I forgot which one it is. Is it Aegis Day tomorrow?
Party.
What is
It's not working for me.
what is the day tomorrow?
Monday?
The
Monday?
24th?
No,
24th.
for the manufacturer.
Kruger.
I was looking at it.
Kruger,
earlier today,
Misk, and Mirai. Okay, so yeah, we'll be doing on Kruger, Misk, and Mirai. We're basically going to be doing a lore tour every day around this time from now until Friday. And we'll be doing longer streams on Friday. I'll be doing a mini pubathon, which is sort of like a subathon, where you can come on, join us live, and if you do donations, subscriptions on YouTube, on Twitch, I should say, we'll go longer, and we'll have stuff to give away, and we'll also do something similar on Saturday. We do these at the end of the month, so it'll be kind of like a Black Friday, and then we'll do a Saturday.
Is it Alien and Drake today?
It's Alien Drake today, and then tomorrow is Alien and Kruger, Misk, Mirai.
When does it change over?
11 p.m. 11 p.m.
EST.
Yeah, Noon EST, usually.
Noon EST. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, 11 a.m. EST.
Is it 11 a.m. EST? Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Cool.
Yeah, 11 Eastern.
Ghost, just pick your party lead. Can you send an invite?
Thanks for doing this every year. I hope you enjoy this. I'll enjoy this and remember this. He's a real historian and a lore master. I am actually a historian, but like that's my day job. But I work with kids though. I don't have the big degrees to be able to go. I could do it. Not like something I just would have to put a lot of time and effort into. And all of my peers who are like PhD level historians in colleges and stuff like that are like, don't, you're gonna get fucked. Like there's just so much job problems going on right now with that, but might be a good fun thing to do if I end up making this my career. I'll do that as just so I can say I have a PhD in history, so I am the professor, you know. That's a lot of money for fun. But thank you for watching, thank you for hanging out. I'll see you all tomorrow, and like I say every time, remember, ex historia ad astra.